Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be discussing 6 short stories from the Amazon Far Reaches collection. I first got introduced to this collection shortly after I finished the Expanse series. James S. A. Corey, 9 books, a number of novellas, other connecting tissue, and I think Amazon smartly knew people were coming off of the Expanse and were happy with the experience and said, well, what else does James S. A. Corey have? And apparently remember, James S. A. Corey is 2 writers writing together under one pen name. And I chose this short story, which was not bad. I'll read you the description of The Far Reaches as a series. The Far Reaches is a 2023 Amazon Original Stories science fiction anthology, edited by John Joseph Adams, featuring 6 original short stories by prominent authors, exploring themes of space exploration, humanity's future, isolation, identity, and cosmic purpose. So, with that first story, which is called How It Unfolds by James S. A. Corey, I was generally pleased. I thought it was a good story. It was a space exploration story, but also a question of trial and error. It's a short story, so I don't want to tell you the plot. It's not long. You can invest in it yourself. But I felt the ending was satisfying. I didn't feel I wasted my time, and I got food for thought. That's what I want from a short story. I want to be happy with the ending, and I want to have an idea that I can talk with people about or that I can reflect on myself. What happened, and I would say that was the same case with the second story, which is Slow Time Between the Stars by John Scalzi. A fascinating short story narrated entirely by an AI, which was built by humanity for long distance travel to try to find another world for humanity to settle. And it's very well done. And I think very timely given all of the interaction we're having with AI at the moment. Also, here, I had a satisfying ending. I didn't feel I wasted my time, and I had food for thought. As we continue to progress, because the series is not even in quality, this starts to break down. And by the time I got to the one I liked least among the 6 short stories, I felt rules had been broken. And when I say rules, there's not some list of rules that we all consult before we start reading. There are just rules that are in place for those who've read a lot in what we think about stories are supposed to do. And there's nothing wrong with, bending the rules or subverting the rules sometimes. But if you bend, break, subvert the rules and you don't pay off, if you don't deliver on that, then you've broken them for no reason. And it led me to do some searching online, say, well, what are some basic short story rules? Because here I am thinking about it and I want to tell you all, but we might as well go over them together. And I knew, of course, Chekhov was going to come on the list, but also Edgar Allan Poe was listed along with the classic list that everyone references which is John Vonnegut's list. So I'm going to read some of these rules for you so you understand what I'm talking about when I said I felt some rules had been violated in some of the storytelling that happened in the later Far Reaches stories. So in Edgar Allan Poe's review of a Hawthorne essay, or Hawthorne's Twice Told Tales and other essays, he articulated these 3 rules. 1, plan the story backward from a single vivid emotional or impressionistic effect that the reader should feel upon finishing. So he obeyed this rule himself with the Telltale Heart. You have a particular feeling when you finish that story. Second rule, keep the work short enough to be read in one sitting, ideally under 2 hours for prose, to maintain uninterrupted immersion and avoid breaking the spell with real-world interruptions. A wonderful idea. Have them consume it there. Do not let them be interrupted. Great, great rule. Third and final rule, know the ending in advance and ensure every detail, incident, tone, word, builds toward that pre-established design with inevitability. When the ending comes, you know it was the only ending possible, even though you didn't know what the ending was in advance. Great, simple rule, and one that I think sits well with readers. They can hear all those and say, I'm on board for those rules. And again, rules here, I would say, service more as a framework, as a construct to build around. Not that you're building a story around these rules, but you're using these rules to build a story. Here are 6 principles from Anton Chekhov. He wrote a letter in 1886 to his brother, and he wrote these 6 rules. 1. Absence of lengthy verbiage on social, political, economic topics. Good rule. Maybe a good rule for life. 2. Total objectivity. 3. Truthful descriptions of persons and objects. 4. Extreme brevity. 5. Audacity and originality, i.e. flee stereotypes. 6. Compassion, and has in your parentheses, empathetic portrayal without needless cruelty. And just as Chekhov is, very terse rules. It doesn't go into a lot of explanation, but I think here, as before, this is a framework. This isn't some rigid thing that you have to build up towards. They are helpful frameworks for you to build around. But as I said, Kurt Vonnegut's rules, which I think were in an introduction to Bagombo Snuffbox, are probably the most famous for short stories, because he's the more recent author among the 3 that I cited. But I think they're also helpful, useful rules. 1, use the reader's time so they don't feel it was wasted. And this was evocative of the other 2 authors as well. 2, give the reader at least one character to root for. This was violated in, I think, 3 of the stories of the Far Reaches. Just had I didn't really connect with someone necessarily. 3, every character should want something, even if it's just a glass of water. Great idea to move the narrative forward. 4, every sentence must either reveal character or advance the action. Going back to brevity, what's hidden behind that rule is make that work really hard for you because you're trying to make it a short story. You don't have time to be wasteful. And that's obviously a good rule for long form writing as well. You don't want to be wasteful with your sentences. But here, I think he's just trying to point out, if it's a short story, you have to be even more urgent in the way that you think. 5, start as close to the end as possible. Wow, great idea. 6, be a sadist. Make awful things happen to good characters to show what they're made of. And the Stoics, the people who like to trumpet Marcus Aurelius and others like that, would argue for this as a good life rule, that you have to see how you do when bad circumstances befall you. And I'm not saying to root for that in your own life, but I would say you'd root for yourself to do well under bad circumstances. Here in the story, he's simply pointing out to those who would write short stories, and probably those who would enjoy short stories, this is something powerful to do within the framework of a short story. 7, write to please just one person. If you open a window to the world, romance will blow in. And here, look at the consonants with the rules. 2, give the reader at least one character to root for. 3, every character should want something. So Vonnegut is pointing out what so many of my professors and teachers and mentors have shown me over the years in regards to writing, that write for yourself, write for one person, and speak to that person, and you'll be surprised you're actually speaking to a lot of people. But don't try to write for this larger audience. Speak to a particular person, speak to a type of person. And that rule here, write to please just one person. If you open a window to the world, romance will blow in. You'll find out you're actually speaking to more than one person. And rule number 8, give your readers as much information as possible, as soon as possible. To heck with suspense. Again, it's a short story. You don't have a lot of time. So, as I said before, the first 3 books, I think, follow these rules, and they generally deliver something satisfying. The stories are not long. They can be read in one sitting. How It Unfolds by James S.A. Corey. As I said, that's what got me into this series. Then I found out, there's other books in this series. That was the smart hook from Amazon. They took one of their best performing authors probably in the last few years. The Expanse did very well for Amazon, not just at a television level, but for book sales. Then Slow Time Between the Stars by John Scalzi. I told you that's the AI story. Then there was one called The Long Game by Ann Leckie, which takes us to a world in which these non-humanoid creatures are being used to produce materials for humans. And of course, this is a thinly veiled look at colonialism. You could say exploitative colonialism instead of noble colonialism, in which you are trying to have synergy between peoples and you're both trying to help each other. This is a purely exploitative colonialism, I would argue, based on the frame of the book. And it's a really interesting thought experiment. And as we've always said with science fiction, they're trying to talk about issues here and now, but they put it in the future and they use different creatures and they use different planets. And that way we can try to examine the ideas in these different pieces. Those three stories, The Long Game, Slow Time Between the Stars, and How It Unfolds, I feel very comfortable recommending. Just go check them out. The last three, I don't feel comfortable recommending. You can skip. Don't feel like a completist. I have to try all 6 books in the series. No, I just told you the best 3. You can skip these last 3, but I'm going to tell you why. So Just Out of Jupiter's Reach by Nnedi Okorafor, just average ending, generally mediocre. I would say that it's an interesting, really interesting story to can I spoil this? It's not really a spoiler. The frame that they're using is an organic spaceship. I'll leave it at that. I won't tell you how or why it's organic, but they don't really explore that. I feel like that's a pretty central part of the story. They explore it somewhat, but overall, it doesn't deliver as much as I would like, given the scope of what they were going for. I think an average ending and an okay story. Now, continue to go down. Void by Veronica Roth. This is a bit of a detective story. It's fun and breezy, and you think you're inside like a Dick Tracy comic book detective story, really, but set out in the stars with this interesting premise of light travel and how the passengers age much faster, but the people who are working class on the ship, they don't age, obviously, because they're the ones traveling, doing all these shuttle runs. And just terrible ending. Breaks numerous rules, the ending does. And I don't know that I'm really rooting for any of the characters. As I say, we're at 5th out of 6 now, but don't worry, there's one at the very bottom, which is Falling Bodies by Rebecca Roanhorse. I wrote down worst of the series, breaks storytelling rules, particularly with the ending. So this channel usually does not do non-recommends. I've said before, life is too short for me to spend time recommending books that you don't read. On this channel, we generally only do books that I recommend. So I'm mitigating that rule a little bit by giving you a series, telling you a little bit about why I felt some stories in the series broke those rules by using the rules that I referenced in the first place. So, as I said before, The Far Reaches, an Amazon series. If you have Amazon Prime, at least in the United States, you can borrow these for free, both on audio and Kindle. So you don't even have to pay. But as they say, I only recommended the 3 that I think are worth reading: How It Unfolds, Slow Time Between the Stars, and The Long Game. You can skip the other 3. Or if you want to do some practice in what I talked about in terms of rule breaking and having your own sense of, well, what do I think rules are? The ones that I gave, I think, are good primers. But if you want to, go read those other 3 that I don't like and tell me I'm wrong in the comments. I'm always happy to hear from you. If you enjoy this content, remember to hit like or subscribe. It's one of the ways that you can support this channel. I'll also put links to all the books in this series below, even though I told you to only pick 3. It's one of the other ways that you can support this channel by buying from those links. If you want to thank me for this presentation, there's PayPal, there's Buy Me a Coffee, there's links below. If you want to get early access to videos like this one, as well as a once a month behind the scenes, Q&A, etc., there's Patreon and YouTube membership. Both of those are available below. And if you'd like to nominate a book for the future or nominate another Amazon 6-part series, my Amazon wish list is below. And you'll see links to books on Palestine. Obviously, that's for my Palestine bookshelf project. But if you want, and you're welcome to go check that out. but obviously books that are not on Palestine are for this project. So feel free to buy one of those, send them my way, and I will do my best to cover that book in a timely manner. Until next time, enjoy your reading.